Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and start today's Gas and Oil Board meeting. I'm Bill Harris. I'll be chairing the meeting today in the absence of our normal chair who's out of town. I am a public member, and I'd like for the other members to introduce themselves, other board members to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Rita Surratt, who's to my right.
Rita Surratt, public member.
Gus Jansen, public member.
Willard Cochran, member for the industry or Genie Energy.
And-
Bruce Fraser. I represent the oil and gas industry for the board.
And Donald Ratliff, and I represent the coal side.
Mary Quillen, public member.
Okay. So thank you all for the introductions. And I think we'll go ahead and proceed to the suggestion that Mr. Lansing, if that's okay with the other folks present, introduce and present to us the policy. And that way, hopefully, if it's approved, we can go ahead and have full comment from folks who have called in. So, Ms. Lansing, if you want to go ahead and do that.
Sure, I would be happy to. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you have a draft electronic meeting policy that is on your agenda for today. We are going to, I understand we may move, at the suggestion of the chair, we're moving that up in the agenda in order to allow several members of the board to participate remotely today. This policy is designed to give effect to amendments that were introduced by the General Assembly back in September of 2022. And as you may remember, of course, we went through a pandemic. And during that pandemic, I'm guessing that you all probably got used to the idea of being able to have meetings electronically because the General Assembly temporarily gave permission to various different public bodies to do that during the pandemic. But once the pandemic ended, the General Assembly then had to ask the question, are we going to allow this to happen on a regular basis? Are we going to keep allowing public bodies to meet electronically? And if we do, what policies are we going to put in place to allow that? Well, the General Assembly basically gave the answer, you know, we're okay with doing that, but we're not very happy about it. And so they adopted some amendments in September that allowed for these electronic meetings to take place, but with significantly more restrictions that were in place during the pandemic. And the whole philosophy that seems to underlie these amendments that went into effect in September is a philosophy that expresses a strong favor and preference for public bodies meeting in person, not electronically. Obviously, for some public bodies, that can be more difficult than for other public bodies. Of course, for the Virginia Gas and Oil Board, you have a public body that has people from all over the state meeting in the southwestern portion of the state, and I'm guessing it's probably a little more difficult to get people together in person than it is for a lot of other public bodies where their members are all located in Richmond, Virginia, or in some other place. But that's just the limitation that we're dealing with in light of what the law gives us. So let's go over two different categories of meetings that the General Assembly has laid out for us. The first of those is situations where a public body is meeting with a quorum that is physically assembled in one place. The second category is where the entire meeting is taking place electronically. That means everybody's dialing in from their homes. So we'll look at that first category first, because that's probably what y'all are more used to doing. Under the first category, This is something that to some extent has been allowed for a long time, even prior to the pandemic. But as of the September amendments, there's a new big change in place. And that is the requirement that whenever you were meeting and someone is dialing in remotely, you still have to have a quorum that is physically assembled. That means most of the people meeting have to be meeting in person. That's probably the big game changer for us. In some ways, the law got a little bit more flexible. For example, it gave more reasons for a public body, more indulgence in being able to meet remotely. So in the past, it had to be a medical condition or a temporary or permanent disability or a personal matter. Now we have some extra reasons. For example, living 60 miles or more away. I'm going to pull up a document in a minute that I had planned to have pulled up at the end of this meeting when it was going to be my turn to give this, and I'm going to go over those reasons. Give me just a second. All right, so the 4 reasons that you have that allow you to meet, to dial in remotely, as a few members have today, are first, a disability or a medical condition. That reason is old, that's existed for a long time. The second is a family member's medical condition. So if you need to take care of a family member who has COVID or some other medical condition, of any kind, then that is its own reason, its standalone reason for being able to dial in remotely. The third reason that would allow you to dial in remotely is that the meeting location is more than 60 miles from your principal residence. And it's really important to make sure we don't get confused over this, because principal residence is different from location. It's not enough for you to be 60 miles away from the meeting location. You have to actually live 60 miles away. So if you are currently located in Richmond, but you live in Big Stone Gap and the meeting is taking place in Big Stone Gap, then that meeting is not going to suffice. You actually have to live 60 miles or more away. The last reason is sort of the catch-all reason, and that is a personal matter. The General Assembly didn't tell us exactly what a personal matter is. It's just anything that doesn't fall under any of the other reasons. But if you're going to use that catch-all reason, if you're going to use personal matter as your reason, then there are a lot more restrictions on it. The big one is the personal reason has to be identified with specificity. And the other thing is that there's a cap on the number of times you can use that personal matter. It's limited to 2 meetings per year or 25% of the meetings that you hold in total. Y'all meet quarterly, is that right?
Monthly.
Monthly.
Okay, all right. So then if you're meeting every month, then 25%, you know, that's going to be generally about 3 meetings. It's only about 3 meetings per year that you can use a personal matter as your reason for dialing in remotely. And that means you need to keep track in the minutes and in your other records of how many times in each calendar year you're dialing in for a personal reason as opposed to any of the other 3 reasons. So to keep track of those, and of course the secretary should keep track of them as well. If you're dialing in remotely for any other reason, then there's no cap on the number of times that you can dial in remotely. For example, you could dial in, say, 3 out of 12 times because you have a medical condition that prevents you from attending in person. And then maybe you could dial in another 3 times for some generic catch-all personal reason. As I mentioned, for those first 3 reasons out of the 4, there's no limit on the amount of times you can dial in remotely. But you still should do everything you can to attend in person. And can you guess why, even if you have a good, valid legal reason for dialing in remotely, why should you try to be there in person, even if you're otherwise authorized to dial in remotely? I'm going to take volunteers from the crowd here. Anybody want to take a stab at that?
I guess it gives a better appearance to the public if it's a public meeting and we have members of the board actually physically there.
Yeah, I think that probably underlies what the General Assembly had in mind. But there's one other big reason why, even if you can dial in remotely, you should try to avoid it if you can. Can anybody
I think
take a stab as to what that
being
might
there
be?
Being there in person and being able to interact with the others is important. Plus, if there's visuals that's been printed, passed out, we don't have an opportunity to see those.
Okay. That's definitely another real reason, but there's a big practical reason that can really mess things up potentially if you dial in remotely, even if you have
Someone
a
could
valid
easily
reason to
pose
do
as
so.
someone else.
No,
Someone
no, I'll give you the answer. If you're thinking of dialing in remotely, odds are somebody else might be thinking about dialing in remotely too. And if too many people dial in remotely, then you don't have a quorum. So we're in good shape today because we have a quorum that's physically assembled. Even though we have a few people dialing in remotely, we still have a quorum that's present. A little while ago, I was there as counsel for a meeting that was taking place in Richmond. And at this meeting, we were going to adopt our new electronic policy, our new electronic meeting policy, to take into effect these amendments that went into effect in September. And I think word got around that we were adopting a new electronic meeting policy, and people got excited about it. And they started saying, oh, well, we're having a remote participation policy. I'm just going to participate remotely. The problem is that a lot of people said that. And in fact, more than half of the people said that. And so we actually had a minority of people attending in person. And so we just weren't able to meet. And if that happens, if we get too excited about remote participation, then we just can't meet at all. It's always essential to have a quorum of people physically assembled. So even if you can attend remotely, try to avoid it if at all possible. We're in good shape today, but just make sure that you attend whenever you can in person. So after you have made your request to participate remotely, it then needs to be approved by two different people. The first is it needs preliminary approval from the chairman. And then second, it needs to be approved by the board at large. And the board needs to basically ratify the decision of the chair. It's important to emphasize this is a right or wrong decision. So we're not just deciding whether we want this board member to be able to vote or whether we like the idea of this board member being able to participate remotely. This is a technical decision where the board and the chair are simply making the decision about whether it is legal for this person to participate remotely. If it is legal, then the board has to admit the person. They're required to admit the person. And if it isn't legal, if they don't meet the legal qualifications, then the chair and the board are each required to disapprove that person from being able to attend remotely. So what the Freedom of Information Act tells us is that it has to be strictly and uniformly applied. And of course, I can help in determining whether all of this is being done legally. I can tell you now, in my opinion, everyone who wants to participate remotely today has a legal reason for doing it. That is in part due to the fact that this is our first meeting of the year. And so the clock has reset. We're now on a new calendar year. So no one has maxed out on their reasons for attending for a personal reason. As long as it's identified with specificity, you're good to go. And also we have a quorum that's physically in attendance. So that also helps us out. But at some point later on in the year, we might get to the point where someone has maxed out on their personal reasons. and they don't have a valid other reason for attending, or we might get to the point where maybe we don't have a quorum physically assembled, and either one of those would be a classic reason for not being able to allow someone to participate remotely or not being able to meet at all. I'm going to stop there and just see if there are any questions before I go any further. Does anybody have any questions about what I've covered so far?
Yes, this is Mary Quillen. When we said that we meet every month, since the pandemic, we have only met every other month, and sometimes with a span of 3 dates in between.
Okay, during the pandemic, that may have been completely fine, but now at this point with the September amendments, we have new rules in place that we will have to follow.
Well, my understanding is that depends on the number of items on the agenda. If we have enough items on the agenda or applications in order to call a meeting for that specified date and that specified month.
Ms.
Do you
Quillen,
take
I'm
that
sorry, I'm
into
not sure I understand
consideration?
You're saying if we have enough items on the agenda, we can allow remote participation regardless?
No. There are a number. I right off the top of my head, I don't have the information in front of me of the number of meetings we have actually had in 2022. I believe it was 6, but I'm not positive. So is this going to, the same restrictions apply to the number, by the number of times that you have to participate remotely?
Yeah. Are you talking about 6 all virtual meetings where in those 6 occasions, everybody was dialing in remotely?
There wasn't enough business to justify us coming to a meeting. In other words, some of them, there was only maybe 2 items or something like this. And it was
Okay.
items that could be handled easily by the DMME.
Okay.
Let me jump in a second, and I think there's 2 different streams going on. Ms. Lansing, you were saying that since we are scheduled to meet monthly, then that's 12 meetings a year, and you're saying 25% of those. And
That's
that's where your 3 meetings came from. And
I
I
see.
think what these folks are saying is we don't necessarily have 12 meetings a year.
I
And
see.
so it's actually, I won't say it's always less, but often it's less than that, especially in this day and time where if we don't have a minimum number of applications, then we carry those over to the next month's meeting. But
I
we
see what
don't
you're saying.
know until we get items in. Well, we probably know now if we're going to meet next month, but we don't know 2 months from now. It's not automatically that we're scheduled to meet. So when you're talking
Yeah.
25%, that's I think that's maybe where we're kind of looking at, well, you know, how do we count the numbers?
Yeah. How do we count the numbers at the beginning of the year when we don't know
Yes.
exactly how many
Yes.
times in the year we'll meet?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good question. My recommendation would be to err on the safe side. And just to back up a little, let me make sure that the rule is clear to everybody. The rule is you can have remote participation for each member at 2 times per year for a personal reason. For a personal reason, it can be 2 times per year or 25% of the meetings in the calendar year, whichever is more. So if you have 12 meetings, then 25% is 3. But if you have 6 meetings, then 25% is 2. So what I would recommend is that you just stick with 2 as your number until you know for sure that 25% is more than 2. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So err on the safe side.
As long as they're not drilling, we're not going to have very many meetings. most of the stuff that is coming through for the board to participate on is stuff that has to do with their production, something that is already in fact. The meetings that we have had for the last year, most of it has been information that really we voted on, that we knew what the pre-existing affirmation was going to be on these things. In other words, we really didn't need it. The reason we needed the meeting was to help the public.
Mm.
But the things that we're doing, in other words, if they were drilling wells and this, that, and the other, I can participate in that and help them a lot. But when you're not drilling wells and all you're doing is having information for the state's benefit, which is normally stuff that we don't ever vote against. So that's what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years, and until they get back to drilling, we're still going to have small items on our agenda.
I'm
I guess
trying to
just-
figure out whether there was a question in there.
Just to interject, the question I think could be is this board have the authority on its own to not meet if we don't have a number of items on the board? If we only have one item that needs to be addressed, should we be meeting, or can we carry that meeting forward until we have more items on the agenda? Is that-
I see. Well, that wouldn't be a FOIA question. I think that would be a question that would relate more to what the state code says about your governing law. I think you can carry it forward. I don't think there is a deadline on saying you have to act now, but I would need to check through the Virginia Administrative Code and the state code provisions that relate specifically to the Gas and Oil Board to make sure I know the answer to that. And I have a feeling Sarah might know the answer to that. I know this last meeting, we were planning on meeting in January, and we were able to punt that off until February. And I don't know of any problem with having done that.
Yeah, I guess there's two issues there. I think January, we did not have a quorum. We weren't going to have a quorum is why we weren't going to meet in January.
Yeah.
So, and I'm assuming that's always a valid reason for not meeting if you don't have a quorum.
Right.
But is it a valid reason if we only have one item on the docket, should we be meeting, or should we be able to move that? Can we have that policy in place?
Yeah.
I think that's a question, is whether that policy has actually ever been voted on by the board.
Yeah. I think that is a valid reason, but let me get back to you on that and I'll check.
If you could
I'll
check
check.
that, that'd be great.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
All right.
if
So
we're going,
moving, I'm sorry.
if we're going to be demanded to be in attention down there attending
Yeah.
for one item, I think we ought to be paid for it. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't need the money or anything else, but I think it's rather ridiculous to go down there for 2 or 3 items that really don't mean a whole heck of a lot. Now, when you're drilling wells, yeah, I can understand what we're talking about. But when actually what we're doing is going down there approving small items that the state requires, and it could be done, I mean, it really doesn't need the board. And I think
And the other thing is
same thing.
that the other thing is that no one that has served on this board, I have served on this board for almost 20 years, and no one has ever abused any of those provisions. Everyone that has served on that board since I have been on it has been very diligent about making sure that they were there, and certainly was there to participate and provide their opinions and their insights into different questions that we are addressing at every meeting. And I mean, it's like that the board is being accused of taking advantage of these opportunities, and that certainly is not the truth. and not from anybody. And like I said, we've seen a lot of different members on the board, and I've been on this board a long time, and I have missed very few meetings. And one of them, my husband passed away, and the one in January that I could not attend, I was having major surgery. And I don't think that's abusing or taking advantage of not coming into a meeting.
No, certainly not. Yeah, Ms. Quillen, of course, I'm new to this board, so thank you for having participated in it for 20 years. That's quite a dedication, and I'd certainly hope.
Very dedicated.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. I certainly don't want anything I've said to sound like well, in anything like an accusation at all, or a statement about this board. All I'm doing is simply telling the rules that have been given to us by the General Assembly, and those rules apply to every public body, not just the Virginia Gas and Oil Board. It's not that the General Assembly doesn't trust us. It's not that the General Assembly thinks that the Gas and Oil Board is abusing anything. These are the rules that apply to everybody, including to the General Assembly itself.
But common sense, what Mr. Prather said about having one or two items, have you bought a gallon of gas recently? Of course it's an inconvenience.
Mm-hmm.
And using good common sense, which is what these folks in the department there in Big Stone Gap are making, these good decisions, looking out for the members of the board, for the people that we are serving. And I mean, to me, it's kind of ridiculous to say you're going to have a meeting if you only have one or two items on the agenda. I just don't think that makes good common economic sense to begin with.
Yeah.
But it is. But these people are giving and being paid for this. We have never been paid for anything. As long as I have been on this board, and the people have given of their time and their expertise, and we have done with this board, we have done a miraculous job of handling all of the challenges that this board has had. I was on this board at the time that there were some meetings that they would run for 2 days, from early morning till late in the afternoon for 2 days. This is, and as what Mr. Prather said, when you're not drilling, you don't have all of those items on the agenda until we do see some drilling to begin. I mean, I think that our folks there in Big Stone have done a very good job, made very good decisions, and I think that should be addressed. And whether it's addressed with the General Assembly or whoever, because I think they are making the right decisions about the number of items on the agenda, and you can't always plan far enough in advance. It'd be wonderful if we could, but you can't plan in advance when there is going to be something that comes up in your personal life that you're giving your time. That's just my opinion.
I guess we need to try to move on. Ms. Lansing, I know you're just the messenger in this. And of course, the messenger sometimes pays the penalty if people are unhappy. And what we're saying about small items for the meeting, if we have that small number, we usually bump the meeting to the next month. And so I don't see this as you're asking us to attend 12 meetings a year, even if we have one item. I didn't read that into the policy. But what you're saying is when we do have meetings, we have to have a quorum here, and those who are not here have to have what the General Assembly considers a legitimate excuse for not being here.
That's right.
We have
I'm not
always
addressing the
been
question
required,
of whether
we have,
I'm not addressing the
we
question
have always
of,
been required to have a quorum before we have a meeting.
Yeah.
Always.
Mr. Chairman, this is Donnie, and I don't want to prolong this, but I've got one question. I think he can answer with yes or no. What about our clients that come to us for petitions for a particular month? Can they participate electronically and
Yes.
present their risk? Okay.
yeah, anyone who's not a member of the board doesn't need to have a reason for dialing in remotely. So for example,
Okay.
I'm dialing in remotely. I don't need to have a reason for dialing in remotely. We don't need to have a policy allowing me to do that because I'm not a member of the board. So this policy only applies to actual members of the board.
Okay. I just want to clarify because that question would come up. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. All right, let's move on to the next portion of what this meeting addresses, or what this policy addresses, rather. So the first component dealt with remote participation. That's where you have a quorum that's physically assembled in one place, and then you have individual members who are participating remotely. The next portion, which is Article 3 of this policy, deals with what the General Assembly calls all virtual meetings. And all virtual meetings are where everybody is dialing in remotely. There is no one physical location for the meeting. This is something that, of course, we got into the habit of doing on a regular basis during the pandemic, and the General Assembly made some temporary allowance for it. But when the pandemic was over, that law met its sunset, and then the General Assembly said we'll make some permanent provisions allowing for it, but we're not going to be as generous or as loose with allowing them as we were during the pandemic. So the big rule about all virtual meetings is that they are only allowed every other time. So you can't have 2 all virtual meetings in a row. Between any 2 all virtual meetings, you have to have at least one meeting where a quorum of people are physically assembled. And as with remote participation for a personal reason, you also have that cap of 2 meetings per year, or 25%, whichever is greater. So we'll just stick with 2 because that's the easy number to give, and that's the predictable number to give. You can't have more than 2 all virtual meetings per year. At the end of the year, we might be able to have a third one if we've had enough meetings. The meeting notice has to specify that the meeting is all virtual. So for example, if we're planning on attending in person and the notice for the meeting has advertised the meeting as taking place here in Big Stone Gap, but we don't have a quorum of people physically assembled, we can't get out of that muck by just turning it into an all virtual meeting. If it wasn't noticed as all virtual, then it can't be all virtual. It can only be in person with a quorum physically assembled. And of course, as I think you already know, you have to provide public access for an all virtual meeting. That means that if you're meeting remotely online, then the online world needs to be able to see your meeting. The last thing I'll just add is that this whole policy allows for committees of the board to do the same thing. I don't know if y'all even have committees for the Virginia Oil and Gas Board, though, do you?
No, we
Only on special occasions we've
Yes.
had committees in the past.
traditionally don't, yes.
Okay, so if somehow for some reason you need to create a committee and the committee would like to meet online or allow remote participation, this policy can be used for the purpose of doing that. So that's the end of my explanation of the policy. Do y'all have any questions about the remainder of what I've covered?
So going forward, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, going forward, today, what do I need to do is to give approval for those folks who are here virtually and then have the rest of the members here vote on that, or do
That's
I do
right.
that by virtue of a motion, or do I just make a decree that they have acceptable reasons since you're here who can verify that? I mean, what?
I guess the first motion should be that we adopt this policy. Is that the first motion that needs to take place?
That's right, Mr. Chair. The first thing you would do is hold a vote to adopt this policy. And then we can take it from there. I can explain how we admit the individual members from that point on.
One last question on the virtual meetings. If we schedule a virtual meeting, say for the next month, if for whatever reason we don't need to have that meeting, does that count as a scheduled virtual meeting, or does it just sort of go away? If we cancel the meeting, if there's nothing to have on the docket.
Good
So in other
question.
words, and sometimes we may or may not know if we need to have a meeting the next month. But
Right.
could we schedule it virtually if we weren't sure? And then if we didn't have it, we could just cancel it, and then it wouldn't count against us in the number of meetings.
That's right. It doesn't count unless you actually hold the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, well, I guess what I need to do then is entertain a motion to approve the policy that's been presented, so.
I'll make the motion to
Okay.
approve the policy as presented by Mr. Lansing today.
So Mr. Jansen made the motion. Do we have a second? Rita Surratt seconded. Any further discussion from board members here? Let me do it that way. Fine, all in favor?
The only thing I'll say is I don't envision, unless they change the drilling rules to where people get back to drilling, the amount of business going through this board is going to be very little for the next, until they change this drilling thing.
Mr. Prather, yeah, we can address that after this, because I don't think this impacts, I mean, the fact that you're more than 60 miles away to begin with is one of the reasons given for attending virtually. But
If you reside more than 60 miles away.
I
Sorry
don't
to interrupt.
recall I ever missed a meeting that really I was needed there.
yes, I understand. I understand. Well, there's a motion on the floor, and I guess we need to take a vote of board members who are here, since we do have a quorum. And we'll ask Ms. Gilman to do that. Would you go ahead, or do we want to?
Mrs. Surratt,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Jansen,
Yes.
Mr. Cochran,
Yes.
Okay, so that motion is approved.
And
Okay, the
Donnie's
voting
on
members
here.
are only the
yes.
people who are there in person. Is that right?
I'm sorry, the motion was made and approved by people who are here in person. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so the next thing that would take place to admit the people who are attending remotely is a determination by the chair that that's allowed. That doesn't require a motion. It's just a decision that the chair makes that's announced by him.
Okay, well, as acting chair of this meeting, then we will allow the folks who are participating remotely to become official board member participants for this meeting. We have Mary Quillen, Bruce Prather, Donald Ratliff. Was there someone else who was there as a board member? Okay, so those three folks have discussed their reasons for not being here, and we would deem that being approved. And so therefore I would deem them eligible. Now, I don't know if I can do that, but I'll deem them eligible to participate in today's meeting.
Well done. The next component then is for the board to ratify the chair's decision. And so if you look at the back of your policies, I've given you some resolutions to be filled out. Don't worry, I've done that for you this time. But for future meetings, I would suggest collect that information in advance so that the resolution can be filled out right there. And then you can move from there. This resolution, I know it's a pain in the rear end to fill out forms. But I think this form you'll find is you're going to find that it's very helpful. The reason is, we went over a lot of rules today in this electronic meeting policy. And of course, it's easy to break one of the rules with, perfectly good intentions and trying to do it right. It's easy to miss something. The design of this form, if you fill it out in a pretty intuitive way, is that when you're admitting someone to be participating remotely, or if you're denying someone from participating remotely, if you're filling out the form in a pretty intuitive way, then you should be able to comply with all of those rules. That's at least the goal behind the form.
Can I ask you a question? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
This is under Annex A, I guess. It's the resolution approving remote attendance of a meeting member.
That's right. Yeah.
So I just tried to fill in, this cannot be done electronically. So this has to be done by a member who's not going to be here. Print this out, fill it out, mail it in, or fax it in. Is that what is going to be required?
No, it can be done electronically. And in fact, all you really have to do, if you're a member who is wanting to participate remotely, just give me a heads up the day before and just say, I'm wanting to participate remotely. Here's where I'm going to be. Here's the reason why I can't be there. And then I'll fill it out for you. And if I have any other questions, I'll just ask.
Okay. Okay.
So I hate to take up any more speaking time than I already have, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read out this resolution, and you'll stop me and make sure that everything I'm reading is correct. If I say anything that isn't right, like if I say that you're dialing in from a place you're not dialing in from, then please jump in, interrupt me, and correct me so that I can get the resolution right. Y'all ready? Whereas the board has met with a quorum physically assembled in one location on the date of this resolution, whereas Mary Quillen, Bruce Prater, and Donald Ratliff, the members, desire to participate remotely in said meeting due to a temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition that prevents the members' physical attendance, in the case of Ms. Quillen, and a personal matter, the specific nature of which is presence enrichment in the case of Mr. Prater, and delays due to travel in the case of Mr. Ratliff.
Prather.
Prather.
T-H-E-R, P-R-A-T-H-E-R, yeah.
Okay, great. I've got that corrected.
And Mr. Ratliff is the one that's in Richmond.
Mr. Ratliff is the one in Richmond. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm sorry, Mr. Prather, can you remind me where you are and why you're dialing in remotely then?
Well, I'm in Parkersburg, West Virginia.
Visiting family.
My wife died 5 years ago, and I still have my residence in Abingdon, Virginia, but I live with my daughter up here in Parkersburg, West Virginia.
Okay.
And if anybody told me that I had to be down there physically, I would have been there. I mean, I don't understand why we're getting this type of stuff now, because, like I say, you can check back on my historic record of attendance, and you'll see that I've been there most of the time.
Yes, sir. That makes sense. I'm just trying to fill out the form in a way that makes sense.
Well, now,
I think if I say that you're in West Virginia, then that's a good enough reason to satisfy what we need to fill out in this form.
Well, there's another reason too. I've got a sister that's 100 years old, and she's in the hospital in Midland, Texas, and I got back from Midland yesterday.
Okay. All right. So what I'm gonna put down is a personal matter, the specific nature of which is presence in West Virginia in the case of Mr. Prather and presence in Richmond in the case of Mr. Ratliff. Does that work?
That should, yes.
Okay. These members have previously attended a remote meeting for personal reasons 0 times this calendar year, and this amount does not exceed the maximum allowance of remote participation in meetings due to a personal reason for those members for this calendar year. Whereas the members are participating remotely from Richmond in the case of Mr. Ratliff, her home in the case of Ms. Quillen, and West Virginia in the case of Mr. Prather. Whereas the members have notified the chair prior to the beginning of the meeting of the members' request to participate remotely and of the reasons for that request, and the chair has approved those requests. Now, therefore, the board hereby ratifies the determination of the chair that the members may participate remotely and holds that the chair's determination was consistent with the written policy regarding remote participation. The secretary or clerk is hereby directed to include a copy of this resolution in the minutes for this meeting. So if y'all agree with that, you can just say so moved, and then you can vote on it.
So moved.
I have a question. Who is responsible for filling out these forms at the meetings? Who's going to be
Good question.
responsible for that?
Ms. Quillen, I'm planning on being with you to assist anytime y'all meet going forward. So if you ever need someone to fill out that form, I'm happy to do it. Or you can have, you can also have Sarah do it. Any one of us can fill that out for y'all.
I'm not asking if somebody can fill it out. Who's responsible for it?
I'm sorry, Ms. Quillen. I don't think I understand the question then.
You're filling them out today. Who's going to fill them out next month? Are you going to be there to fill them out next month?
Yes, ma'am. I certainly intend to be.
I think, so either you or, we'll get Sarah to fill those out, but if you all are not, I guess in general, if you all know that you're not going to make the meeting and we'll have to dial in remotely, if you all will contact the Gas and Oil Board office early enough so that we can make the proper forms signed, filled out, and whatnot. So I think as a general statement, I think we can go with that.
Signed by who? Someone from the Gas and Oil Board? Or someone from the Gas and Oil Division?
The chairman would have to ultimately sign the approval. So you all would have to communicate that through the Gas and Oil Board office, and the chair would ultimately sign that as approved for remote access for that particular board member. That's my understanding. And that's on your behalf, so you would have to initiate that.
You need to tell them that Sarah calls you, and Sarah's been very good about getting people to.
So do we need to vote?
So do we need to vote on something?
Yes, you would need to vote on adopting the resolution that I just read. I understand
Okay.
there's already a motion on the table.
Okay,
I'll call everybody's name out and you can let us know how you want to vote.
thank you.
Rita Surratt,
Yes.
Bill Harris,
Yes,
Gus Jansen,
Yes.
Willie Cochran,
Yes.
Mary Quillen,
I will abstain.
Bruce Prather,
I'm
abstain.
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt here. The only people voting as of now can be people who are physically in attendance. So people dialing in remotely They haven't been admitted into the meeting yet, and so they can't vote on this resolution.
Okay, and if people let me know ahead of time that they're not gonna be there, we'll get the forms filled out and we'll have the chairman sign on the day of the meeting. It's no problem.
So I guess as chair, the motion or that motion would carry since the board members present did approve that.
Yes, that's right. As long as you have a quorum of the people who've approved it, then they're now admitted into the meeting.
Yes. Okay, so we can legally admit those. Yes.
That's
Now that
right.
we're
They're
legally
they're
admitted,
admitted as of
I would-
now.
I
Is
would
there-
just like to assure everyone, we've got the best staff in any agency in Virginia, and they take care of us so well. I don't see a problem or a hassle with this thing.
Okay, yeah, I don't see it either. My,
If your vote doesn't.
well, anyway, I want to let this go because my only concern was, again, as I stated at the outset, this would have been something good to discuss meeting, and then our next meeting, we go through these things. I just, it's just, I guess, kind of odd to do this at the meeting where you're voting whether or not people can participate in the meeting, but that's just a commentary, so just ignore that. Sorry, that's just my personal opinion.
You're doing an outstanding job. Carry on.
Okay, so are we through with this issue then, or do we need to, is there something else?
We are through with it. My role in this meeting is done unless you call on me for any questions.
Yay.
Okay, I guess we can move forward to the agenda then. The board will receive public comments. Was anyone here to? Not seeing anyone, we're going to move on to the next item. This is item number 2. And the First Bank and Trust Company escrow agent for the Virginia Oil and Gas Board will appear to address the board on the quarterly/end of year report. Do we have someone from the bank?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Can
Is
everybody
this-
hear me?
Is this Ms.
This is
Manning?
Joe. Yeah.
Okay, good. Welcome. Sorry for the delay in getting started.
That's quite all right. We'll go through the end of the year statement, even though it's close to the end of February now. It's a little delayed in the statement, but this is our fourth quarter report. I'm assuming that everybody has a copy of it.
Yes.
So we started out. I'm assuming everybody has an electronic copy of it, correct?
Yes, we received that from the board,
Okay.
from the office. Yes.
Okay, we'll start out on page 3. We started out with a beginning balance at early September of $5,148,125.73. We received in deposits for the quarter of $66,896.52. Interest earned between the money market account and the CDs that we had was $4,380.87 for the quarter. The fees deducted were $4,377.95. We paid out distributions for the quarter of $60,562.57, leaving us an ending balance as of 12/31 of $5,154,462.60. Just a review of 2022, we paid out 56 dockets that were treasury dockets, totaling $805,201.26. We processed 49 other dockets, totaling $750,342.62. Over 775 checks were issued in 2022, and they range from 1 penny to over $432,000. We issued 460 checks that were less than $100, and 82 of those checks were less than $1. Now, starting on page 5, this is a list of all of the outstanding checks that were issued as of December 31st, 2022. And sorry for the long list of outstanding checks. That goes through page 27. And so we have a total of almost $100,000 that is outstanding. And since this report was as of December the 31st, some of those may have fallen off now. If you look at the last page, there was some that was issued 12/14/2022. So those could have been cashed by now. So roughly $100,000 was uncashed so far. Page 28 starts our check escheatment. And this is another long list of names that will be escheated to the state this year. There's a little over $3,000. So the list is long, but the dollar amount is not huge. Starting on page 36, this is a list of all of the accounts by number, unit name, their beginning balance in each account, the deposits that were received for the month of December, the interest, the fees deducted, any distributions from that account, transfers to the No W-9 spreadsheet, audit costs, corrections, and then the ending value for each individual account as of 12/31. And so that goes all the way through page number 46. Page 47 starts our list of no W-9s. So these people were on docket and they have not submitted their W-9 information to us to receive their payment. So on that list, there's 427 lines. But as you can see, some of those names are duplicated.
Yes.
So we have a total of $39,940.31 that has been on dockets that needs to be claimed by these people. And if they would send W-9 information in, we could pay them out directly. Page 58 is our list of annual distributions since First Bank and Trust has taken over as escrow agent in 2010. So we've paid out a total of $182,632 and received in a little over $15 million in royalty and working income. Page 59 is our investment of the funds. So you can see as of 12/31, we had money market account. We had 3 CDs remaining for $250,000 each, and the maturity date is on those. So one is coming due early March, one is coming due in June, and one coming due in September. Now, our rate comparison on page 60, we have the CDARS rates, which have not changed, the Treasury rates, which have changed from October, and the CD rates, the brokered CD rates. So as you can see, the Treasury rates and brokered CD rates have been increasing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last page is just kind of an average of the CD rates that we've been seeing. So you have 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, and then our 2-year CDs that we've been seeing. So I will tell you that this is a little outdated now, and if there's interest, I can get current CD rates if there's any interest in reinvesting some of that money.
Okay, Ms. Manning, thank you very much. Board members, any questions? I noticed that, after asking if there are any questions, but, in terms of investments of funds, I noticed that those 3 CDs are, becoming due this year. Do we want to take any action regarding, renewal of those or any changes? I'm on looking at page 59 there.
Mr. Harris, I'm driving. This is Donnie. How much money is on each CD?
Each CD is $250,000. The annual yield, 2.8%, 2.9%, 3.1% on those 3. One is due in March.
I would make a motion that we renew those as they expire.
Okay. For the same period of time, I think these were.
Yes, we staggered them. Yes.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yes. Any discussion about I guess we can take that as a motion, but any discussion about that? There are 3 CDs, 250,000. I'm sorry. Oh, it was Ms. Quillen. Was that you seconding?
Second.
Yes. Okay.
Mr. Ratliff,
Any?
motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So the motion is to renew these as they become due.
With the same
And
time frame.
for the
I think
same,
we
yeah,
did.
okay, for the same, yeah. That's what I wanted to know. Donnie, is that okay for the same time frame as we had before?
Yes, let's keep them staggered. Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
And it may not be exactly with the same CD with the same banks, but we can do another CD ladder and do the same thing.
Okay, okay, because I'm sure that floats along with other things, but I know the bank has always tried to get us the maximum return on those monies. So any further discussion about renewing those investments, those particular ones? So there is a motion on the floor, so I would ask Ms. Gilmer if she would poll the board to find what their answer is, or
Rita Surratt,
Yes.
Bill Harris,
yes.
Gus Jansen,
Yes.
Willie Cochran,
Yes.
Mary Quillen,
Yes.
Bruce Prather,
Yes.
and Donald Ratliff.
Yes.
Okay, that motion has passed. Is there any further discussion since we have Ms. Manny here concerning the bank or the escrow amounts, distributions, rates? Okay, then. Well, Ms. Manny, we thank you very much for this report, even though I know that it's a month old, but that's not your fault. It's, the fact that, we didn't meet last month. So we do appreciate you and the bank taking care of our money. And I guess we'll see you all next quarter.
Yes.
I guess is when we do that. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Okay. Can we take a short break? And maybe 10 minutes or so. So resume the meeting in 10. Find my items here. We're gonna Zoom the meeting.
Resuming the meeting.
Do we have everyone? Yeah, okay, everyone is back. Okay, we'll go back on the record. Our next item is number 3. It's a petition from Key Rock Energy LLC for the establishment the establishment of Key Rock 5, a sealed gob production unit. 2, pooling interest in the subject unit. And number 3, designate the applicant as a unit operator for the subject unit. The unit is KY-5. The docket number, VGOB 22-1115-4252. we'd ask all persons who want to speak to this item to please come forward, introduce themselves.
May it please the board, Freddie Mullins appearing on behalf of Key Rock Energy LLC. And to my right, I have Mr.
Morgan Pate, Key Rock Energy.
And to his right,
Mark Allman, Key Rock Energy.
Thank you. Anyone else? The record will show there are no others present, so you may proceed.
Mr. Chair, we would call Mr. Pate.
Okay, you swear and affirm your testimony is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Alderman, you swear and affirm that your testimony is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pate, please state your name and by whom you're employed.
Morgan Pate, Key Rock Energy LLC.
And what is your job description?
Geology.
And is Key Rock Energy LLC authorized to conduct business in the Commonwealth of Virginia?
Yes.
And is there a bond on file with this department? Is that also correct?
Yes.
And you're familiar with docket number 4252, this application that's before the board?
Yes.
And this is for a coal bed methane well, is that correct?
Yes.
And is this unit located in the Nora coal bed gas field?
Yep.
And how many acres does it contain?
234.3.
And can you tell the board what it is that Key Rock plans to do if this application is granted?
We will submit and finalize a permit application to drill the well. We will drill down into the mined out jawbone seam of Deep Mine 41. We will do that under the directions of Virginia Gas and Oil and MSHA because it's an active mine. Once the well is completed, we will put equipment on site to flare the gas to generate environmental credits.
And you said this was the jawbone seam, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, as far as the gas ownership in this unit, is it has Key Rock obtained a lease for this entire unit, proposed unit?
Yes.
And is Intervest gas? Do they own all the gas in the unit?
Yes, sir.
And how is Intervest informed of what we're doing here?
Certified mail receipt, return receipt requested, and we also ran a newspaper ad.
And has the notice with the associated documentation been filed with this board?
Yes.
To the best of your knowledge, are there any unknown owners in this unit?
No.
And does Key Rock Energy, how much of the unit does Key Rock currently have under lease?
100%.
And you're seeking to voluntarily pull that entire 100% today, is that correct?
Yes.
What is the proposed depth of the well?
Bear with me, 803 feet.
And do you know the estimated reserves?
586 MMCF.
All right, and you're familiar with the projected well cost, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And did you participate in the preparation of the AFE file with this application?
Yes.
And that's Exhibit C to the application, is that correct?
Correct.
And what is the estimated dry hole cost?
195,000.
All right. And are you asking the board to create a sealed gob drilling unit and to pool that unit?
Yes.
And as we said before, the pooling would be voluntary, is that correct?
Correct.
And you're not having any escrow requirements, is that correct?
No, sir.
And are you asking the board to name Key Rock as the operator for this unit?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Pate, in your opinion, if the board grants the application before it today, would it prevent waste, promote conservation, and protect correlative rights?
Yes.
All right, that's all the questions that I have for Mr. Pate.
Okay, fine. Questions from board members?
This is Bruce Prather.
Go ahead, Mr. Prather.
Is this a gob well that's being drilled ahead of an active mining operation? Is that exactly what this is?
No, sir. This is a gob well being drilled behind a set of seals in a sealed area of an active mine.
Oh, okay. That's the reason you're flaring the gas, right?
Correct. Part of the reason, if this gas in this mine were pipeline quality gas, it would be suitable to sell the gas into the pipeline, but we don't see that in hardly any active mines. And so We approach these mines from the standpoint that we will flare for credits and sell those instead of putting gas into the pipeline.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, initially I wasn't sure whether or not you were drilling ahead of an active active mining operation to get rid of the gas when they were mining. But what you're doing, you're getting back into the gob area.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions? I'm sorry, were you through, Mr. Prather?
Yeah, I'm through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, you may continue.
That's all the evidence that we'd have in regards to that petition, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anything else? The board will act on the motion. Oh, we need a motion, yes.
Motion.
Rita Surratt made a motion to approve the petition as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Quillen. Any-
Rita Surratt,
Yes.
Bill Harris,
Yes.
S. Jansen,
Yes.
Willie Cochran,
Yes.
Mary Quillen,
Yes.
Bruce Prather,
Yes.
and Donald Ratliff.
Yes.
Okay, I wonder if we,
I'm sorry. I have to abstain.
okay, but Donnie has abstained. Okay, fine, but we do have enough for that motion to pass. Okay, so that's been approved.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. We move on now to the next item. This is item number 4. And this is, read that, a petition from Key Rock Energy LLC for a well location exception for unit Key Rock number 5, located in the Norquad, Irvington Magisterial District of Dickinson County, Virginia. This docket item is VGOB 22-1115-4253. We'd ask all those who want to speak to this petition to please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pate, could you?
I'm sorry, would you go ahead and announce who's?
It would be Mr. Pate.
Okay, and would you?
Freddie Mullins,
names?
petitioner, I'm sorry.
Okay, fine. So Mr. Mullins and Mr. Pate. Okay, fine, thank you.
And we would call Mr. Pate.
Fine, thank you. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Pate, you've previously answered questions regarding petition 4252. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And would your answers for petition 4253 be the same as you gave in 4252?
Yes, sir.
And 4253 is for an exception to location. Is that correct?
Correct.
And Key Rock is proposing that Key Rock, what we call Key Rock number 5, would be placed within 980 feet of Intervest operating well number VC 3971. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're asking the board to give an exception to the 1,000 feet limitation found in Virginia Code Section 45.2-1616?
Yes, sir.
And do you believe, are you of the opinion that the granting of this application would prevent waste, protect correlative rights, and provide for the maximum safe recovery of the mineral reserves underlying the Commonwealth?
Yes, sir.
And it is also your opinion that the proposed well at its proposed location is necessary to effectively and efficiently drain a portion of the common sources of the reservoir underlying the unit?
Yes, sir.
And you're asking this board to enter an order to enable well number Key Rock number 5 to be drilled and depicted as in the application?
Yes, sir.
That would be our evidence, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions from board members?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a
Yeah.
question. In your allegation of facts on page 1 of 2, under item 2.2, you indicate that the distance limitation is not feasible for the unit described in Exhibit A because there is no legal location. If I refer to your map on page sticks in their application where it's been numbered, but it's the plat map there. Shows the KY number 5 well. If you move that well just slightly to the west, could you not meet the 1,000-foot limitation if you just move the well slightly? It would be, there are legal locations is what I'm getting at within this unit to drill this well. Is that not correct?
Mr. Pate.
The location is fairly tight. It's off Liza Gap Road. If we move, I'm trying to orient myself. If we moved it to the east, we would encroach upon a stream drainage. If we moved it west, my concern was if we built a location at that point, we would be cutting the toe off of a slope. And I would rather not do that and risk a rock slide, or not a rock slide, but dirt coming down on us.
So there are legal locations that could be drilled within the unit. So the reason for your exception is due to this topography in the
Correct, sir.
So I think historically, these type of applications that come in front of the board have been provided with some topographic maps and showing some limits to those elements that may be impacting your location. I'd ask that maybe we provide something along those lines that shows the reasons, and your reason be for some reason other than there's not a legal location, because you can meet the legal location at some expense that may be more than you're willing to do the well at, or at some safety factor that you want to bring into cost. And that would be your reason as opposed to no legal location. So there would be a reason for that. If you were surrounded by wells within 1,000 foot, that would be a no legal location, in my opinion. Does the board agree with that interpretation?
Yes, we have, in the past, have been normally provided with some type of a map showing contours or whatnot. You all, are 980 feet from VC 3971?
Yes, sir.
I think that's where we are. What's the board's? What's the board's thought on this? I know that.
Yeah, I'd prefer that we had an application that reflected the reason other than not a legal location. We can have those revisions made to that application.
And what, just so that I understand the board, it would be for no feasible location.
Right, you could come up with a variety of reasons going forward, but in this particular case, it sounds like from what Mr. Pate stated there's some steep slopes involved. There's a stream to the east, which you couldn't move it to the east because you've got other wells to the east, but you don't have any wells nearby to the west. But the reason should be something besides not a legal location available in this case, in my opinion, because you could, it's just like statewide spacing. We could space the wells out. If there weren't any wells drilled, you could space them out. But if you needed to infringe upon another well for a reason, the reason would be some other reason.
Understood.
That makes sense.
And we'll be glad to make those changes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Is that satisfactory, or do we need to have them come back at the next meeting?
I'll leave that to the board's discretion, whether we want to approve that with the staff's approval or whatever they submit. We could do that.
So are we getting a yes from the staff that is acceptable to do?
Yes.
That they would
do that.
Okay.
If you have a problem with it, you'll bring it back.
Yes, correct.
So if that's approved, then it's under the condition that you will provide that to the board.
Yes, sir.
For our records. Okay. So I will entertain a motion in terms of this project. And this,
I'll just make the motion since I had the question. I'll make the motions that we approve the application with the stipulation that they will submit revisions to the staff for approval, which indicates the revised reasoning and additional supporting documentation for that reason.
Okay, Mr. Jansen, thank you. Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Surratt did. Any further discussion? Okay, so the motion is for approval pending not pending, but assuming that this additional material will be submitted to the board. If you would hold the board, please, Ms. Gilman. I'm sorry? Yeah, he did state the motion. Gus, could you state the motion again, just to make sure we have it on record?
Yeah, I would make the motion that we approve the application with the stipulations that additional materials provided to the staff for review with a reasoning other than statewide spacing. There's no legal statewide spacing available. And they provide whatever additional documentation is deemed necessary to demonstrate that.
Okay, do you want to give a time limit on that? 30 days? Is that something that can be done?
Yeah, they can do it as quickly as they want to do it. It doesn't need to come back in front of the board, in my opinion, if the staff is, unless the staff has an issue with it. If the staff wants the board to approve it, they can bring it back. They can recommend it to come back to the board.
Okay.
You have a second?
Yes, do you still, yes. Okay, we're still good.
Ms. Surratt? Yes. Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Cochran?
Yes.
Mrs. Whelan?
Yes.
Mr. Prather?
Yes.
And Mr. Rattler?
Did we?
Mr. Rattler?
I think he's abstaining.
Yes, and I can't speak for him, but I think he has been abstaining particular issues. Okay, so I guess we'll move on to the motion is approved. I guess I need to say that. And again, if you all would submit that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Be glad to.
Fine, thank you. The next item is item number 5, and it's a petition from Key Rock Energy LLC for the establishment of Key Rock, number 1, a sealed GOB unit, 2, pooling of interest in subject unit, and 3, designate the applicant as the unit operator for the subject unit. The unit would be KY-1. Docket number is VGOB 22-1220-4254. We'd ask all parties who want to speak to this item to please introduce themselves.
Freddie Mullins appearing on behalf of Key Rock Energy LLC, and I'll have Mr. Morgan Pate testifying.
Okay, and just remember, you all have already been signed in. I've been sworn in, sorry. You may proceed.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pate, can you please state your name?
Morgan Pate,
And how are you employed, Mr. Pate?
by Key Rock Energy,
And what is your job description?
geologist.
And is Key Rock Energy LLC authorized to conduct business in the Commonwealth of Virginia?
Yes, sir.
And is there a bond on file with the Virginia Gas and Oil Board for Key Rock?
Yes, sir.
And you're familiar with this application 4254, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And this is for a coal bed methane well?
Yes.
And is this unit located in the Nora coal bed gas field?
Yes.
And how many acres does it contain?
482.
All right, and can you tell the board exactly what Key Rock plans to do if this application is granted?
This well will be drilled into the sealed gob area of Deep Mine 41 for the purpose of extracting coal mine methane and flaring it at the surface for the generation of environmental credits.
And this is this will be drilling into the Jawbone seam, is that correct?
Correct.
And have you obtained leases for a portion of this unit?
Yes, sir.
And has that has been with Intervest, is that correct?
Correct.
And just so that the board understands, this is kind of an unusual issue. Mr. Pate, is it your understanding that Intervest actually has all of the area leased?
Correct.
And has there been discussions with Intervest and their counsel, Mr. Scott, as to how to proceed with this particular application?
Yes, sir.
And was it determined after those discussions that there would be a request for pooling opportunities for these other owners that have already leased with Intervest?
Yes.
Okay. And how is Intervest informed of this proceeding?
In-person certified mail return receipt requested and advertisement.
And the Key Rock Energy, they have what percentage of the unit do they have, or are you under lease with Intervest for?
88.8%.
All right. And the other owners that have the aforementioned leases with Intervest, what percentage do they constitute?
11.2.
And they're all listed on Exhibit B3 of the application, is that correct?
Correct.
And as we said, all those owners are already under lease with Intervest.
Correct.
All right. And how were these unleased owners informed of this proceeding?
Certified mail return receipt requested.
All right. And do you have, there were several owners for whom the certified mailing was not claimed, is that correct?
Correct.
And what did Key Rock then do to notify these unleased owners?
We ran a notice in the Dickinson Star.
All right. And have you heard anything from any of these unleased owners that were listed in the advertisement?
No, sir.
All right. To the best of your knowledge, are there any unknown owners in this unit?
No.
And what percentage of the unit are you seeking to pool today?
100%.
So you're seeking to do all of it, including these owners listed on Exhibit B3?
Yes.
Now, are you requesting that the board establish a procedure where all the parties listed on B3 shall have the right to do one of the options listed in the application?
Yes.
And is that in section 4D of the application?
Yes.
And what lease terms would you be offering these owners?
Identical to the lease we have with Intervest.
Okay. And what's the proposed depth of this well?
550 foot.
And do you know the estimated reserves?
In 1,030 MMCF.
And you're familiar with the projected well cost, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you participate in the preparation of the AFE for this application?
Yes, sir.
And what's the estimated dry hole cost of this well?
Approximately $227,000.
And are you asking the board to create a sealed gob unit and to further pool that unit?
Yes.
And to establish these pooling options which allow for voluntary and involuntary pooling?
Yes, sir.
And are you asking the board to name Key Rock as the operator of this unit?
Yes.
And in your opinion, if the board grants your application today, would it prevent waste, promote conservation, and protect correlative rights?
Yes.
All right. That's all the questions that I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let me just ask you a question. I know you talked about publishing in the paper.
Yes, sir.
Normally, we have in our record some type of proof of publication. Was that issued from the paper? Do you know?
Yes, sir, it was. That's actually been filed. You should have a copy of that.
Okay, I didn't see it. I may have missed it.
It did not appear in your packet. Because
Okay.
The packet went out before.
Before that
Before we
received, but we do have a proof of publication. Okay, thank you. Okay, board members, are there any questions?
I've got a question. It's Bruce Fraser.
Mr. Prather? Yes.
Yeah. Is this well going to be 550 feet deep?
Yes, sir.
Don't you think that maybe at 550 feet, depending on where this well is located, particularly on the hills and things, don't you think you're going to get some oxygen instead of methane down there at times in what you're doing? It won't be 100% methane, I wouldn't think.
Oh,
These shallow zones are fractured pretty good, and you can get oxygen down there from our atmosphere at that depth. Usually, people try to have these depths at maybe 800 or 1,000 feet before you start figuring that you can completely pick up the methane.
We fully expect to get CO2, nitrogen, and some small part of oxygen back with the methane stream. We see that in the vast majority of all of our active mines that we're on. We also have the mine itself is going to monitor their oxygen at the seals, and I believe that will be part of the MSHA plan.
Yes.
Additionally, we do not pull very hard on these mines because what you're describing, if we were to pull oxygen across the seals and dilute the oxygen in the workings of the mine, that would not be good. So we're very careful with that, and we have monitoring equipment on surface and monitoring in the mine while we're doing this. I don't expect greater than 60% CH4 from this hole. And I think that has more to do with the underground workings and the ventilation of the mine as much as it does the depth of the hole.
Yeah.
But you are correct. We will not get 100% methane on this well.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Prather?
Yeah, the other thing about it is that, when you start figuring your methane, you are, deleting the oxygen and the air that is in there from your final figures on your methane.
Okay, yes. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Mr. Page has stated that your lease terms, if I understand it correctly, you do have some unleased parties in this unit technically.
Correct.
Yes, there's some people who have signed leases for a separate type of coal bed methane lease with Intervest, and you
Correct.
also have leases that, for whatever reason, they're not part of your project at this point in time.
Correct.
So I don't know if those are people who've been pooled in the past, or if there's a variety of reasons why those leases aren't being assigned to you. You mentioned that your lease terms were the same as Intervest. Could you maybe expand on what those lease terms are specifically?
It was a paid up lease. I hate to guess off the top of my head because this was over a year ago, but we did have an initial upfront payment for the lease. 12.5% royalty on the sale of the credits. It's a 3-year lease. Right to renew the lease at so much per acre, I believe. Access road, surface use, electricity is allowed. Pooling is allowed. Assignment is not allowed. And there is a depth restriction on the lease specific to the jawbone seam. And there is an additional clause where royalty owners would be allowed a second royalty stream if electricity was generated off the gas as opposed to just flaring. And that is mostly the lease.
So these are the same lease terms. You contacted all these people again during your due diligence and offered them the same lease term to sign a lease with Key Rock?
There has not been, and Mr. Pate can correct me, I don't believe there has been any notification with them because there has been some confusion between us and Intervest because one lawyer thinks that their lease allows them to enter into a pooling voluntarily, and Mr. Scott is wary of that because they don't want to be responsible for passing on the payments. And so it was finally decided the best way to try to deal with this situation, because we fully expect to be told, well, we've already signed a lease, to actually have the options to show them whether or not they would, willingly participate or not. It's a very confusing situation. All of the Intervest leases allow for pooling.
I understand.
And it was my argument that we really didn't need to go to them.
Okay. I guess where I think I have a problem as a board member is you're asking this board to approve a lease term to these unleased people because they're going to be deemed unleased through this hearing. But did they actually get notice of the hearing?
Yes, sir.
They all got individual notice?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We notified all of them.
But you did not contact them individually to discuss with them what was done?
We were hoping to convince Intervest that we didn't need to do it, but that fell through.
Okay.
But they all have been notified either through certified mailings or through publication.
Yeah, one of my questions is going to be, what kind of response did you get from these people? Did they just not want to lease, or did they not understand? But you haven't, doesn't sound like you've actually talked to any of these people about what we're doing.
We've not received any contact from them, and we wanted to be sure of what our path was going forward before we tried to lease with them.
We can discuss that a little bit more. Just in the terms of the historic lease terms this board has approved in the past has been something similar to what the industry has done in a standard type coal bed methane well, which is generally there's an acreage payment to these people, dollars per acre for a paid up term of the lease, plus a 1/8 royalty on the amount of gas produced. In this case, we're talking about an energy credit. Mm-hmm. Can you sort of expand on how this energy credit's going to work, how that would compare to a typical coal bed methane production well? Can you give us any history on
A
that?
typical coal bed methane well, they'll measure their gas production monthly, and they will sell it into the pipeline, at a changing price, fluctuating price year over year. And the royalty owners would get an eighth of that. What we do, under the California ARB Air Resource Board protocol, when we start these projects, they can run from either 6 months to 18 months, and we set that initial time frame. Normally, we set it at 12 months. And so from the day of first production, we flare gas for 12 months. At the end of that 12 months, the data we collect from flaring the gas goes to a verification, a third-party verifier. They typically spend 3 to 4 months going over all the data, making sure everything is above board. They submit their report to ARB, Air Resource Board of California. They issue credits, which we sell on the open market. Credits have been trending at close to $17.70, $17.80 per credit. What that means in terms of CBM production is that would be about $7.50 per MCF if it were going into the pipeline. I don't know what the price of gas is in Virginia, but I think that's higher. Additionally, neither Key Rock nor the mine, nor the mineral owners could sell this gas into a pipeline. The CH4 is far too low. You would have to put up some very big equipment to scrub out the CO2 and the nitrogen. In terms of royalty payments, if the initial reporting period is 1 year, a royalty owner could expect to be paid, say, 18 months thereafter. And then after that initial royalty payment, royalties thereafter would occur at 12-month intervals. And so it is not the same as getting paid on a month-by-month pipeline sales basis. This is, the accumulation of, many, many metric tons of CH4 being flared, the generation of credits on that over the course of 6 months to a year, the selling of those credits on the open market, and then the royalty generated off the sale of those credits.
Just as follow-up to that, I think this board has maybe approved one other application in the past. Maybe the staff can chime in on this for a energy credit or carbon credit type of situation with Pocahontas Gas and similar lease terms. Is that correct, staff? Anybody speak to that? I can't remember. I wasn't on the board at the time.
Yes, that was Pocahontas Gas. There was one that came before the board, the vent shaft 16, and that one was testified at that time, the operator, that was paid on an MMBTU basis, like in the same typical lease terms that we'd see for gas.
So it wasn't paid on the carbon credit basis. It was paid on the volume of gas produced.
Yes, that was the agreement with those two companies, with the operator and the company with the flaring unit.
So that's what that board order reflects, that will be paid under an MM as opposed to a carbon credit basis.
That's correct.
Usually, when they're paying it strictly on the BTU or the methane basis, it is because your depth is probably deeper than 1,200 feet on your coal that you're mining. So once you get below 1,200 feet, you usually can sell your methane.
So
I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Just a little further on these terms here that you're asking the board to put forth in an order for payment, which is somewhat different than what we've done in the past. I guess maybe might lean on their attorney here if we have the authority to set those terms that aren't maybe set forth in regulation at this point in time.
I have to admit, I would need to look into that.
Yeah, I guess the other part of this is you're talking about a 12-month to an 18-month period before an individual gas owner would receive any benefit from this. A lot could happen in that time frame. I understand that. what would your reporting requirements be to the department, to the staff here on the gas that's actually produced out of this? Have you gone through that?
We
process?
definitely monitor. We monitor everything at 15-minute intervals. So we can report daily MCF produced, total gas and CH4.
So you can report on a monthly basis to the department how much actual methane you're producing out of the well on a monthly basis.
Yes, sir. We can report that, and we could report it in metric tons of CH4, and then, carry that forward to the, the actual carbon credit, which is a metric ton of CO2. And so all of that can be done weekly, monthly, daily.
Okay. Go ahead.
I guess my concern is for someone who has, I guess, not signed an agreement. Well, I guess there are people who are deemed to be leased from, not deemed to be leased, who are leased with Intervest. I guess I'm just a little confused. That carries over to what you all are doing, or I guess what bothers me is sort of what Gus Jansen is saying. If they did not respond, of course, I know sometimes we lease folks that we will pool folks that don't appear or have not responded. I guess those terms, I'm not sure what I'm saying. I guess I'm just a little concerned.
I'm concerned about it too. That's my
the terms being different than what we normally approve for this type of an agreement.
Those people will have, if this were approved, those people then would have 2 royalty streams, because it's my understanding that the Intervest wells are still active and still producing. So they are almost certainly currently getting a royalty check monthly. And then when I viewed this, it looked more like a top lease, but Intervest did not want to go that direction. In that sense, if they were pooled, they would still get their monthly royalties as long as Intervest continued their production. And then this would be a second royalty stream on top of that.
But it would be the same royalty owners, regardless whether it was the original well or this new situation. Is that correct?
Well, the concern, Mr. Prather, is how are we basing the royalty stream? Is it based on the actual coal bed methane gas produced, or is it based on the energy credit revenue? Which we've never done that in the past.
I would assume that since you can't sell the gas, it's based on the energy ratio.
Say that again.
Can you say that again, Mr. Prather?
Well, the thing about it is your gas at these shallow depths has got oxygen. Well, it's got oxygen, nitrogen, etc. It's got things in it that shouldn't be there. It should all be CH4. And anyway,
Yeah.
what the problem is I don't see how you could make a new set of royalty owners out of shallow gas. And the other thing is, can you sell that methane? Can you say exactly how much methane you're producing and how much nitrogen, or how much oxygen, how much whatever else, helium? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it looks to me like that if you signed the original lease, the coal bed methane lease, that it would cover this too, regardless of what kind of payment it is.
I think they've made that point, Mr. Prather, that they believe that the existing leases cover that. The issue is that Intervest does not want to assume the cost and liability of paying these people as a pass-through on their leases. They prefer that happen directly from Key Rock as opposed to being paid.
Yeah,
Again,
well,
Key Rock paying Intervest and Intervest paying the owners.
Yeah.
So what Key Rock is asking us to do is to set those terms different from what the terms are in the lease with Intervest.
See what the deal
In
is.
the original coal bed methane wells.
With the owners.
Yeah, with the existing
You're
owners.
paying the same people. The well operator's paying the same people you're paying.
Yes.
Yes. We're just paying them a different, on a different basis.
It's hard
And I
to
guess
say
the question is this board comfortable with setting that basis today in the way they're presenting it to us? And can that be documented within the scope of our regulations? That's why I asked the Attorney General what his opinion was.
Yep. So do we anticipate other
Yes.
wells?
I've got two more I'm getting ready to file.
And those are the same situation.
Same situation?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They will be fully leased, but not, fully leased, by Intervest to Key Rock. There will be other individuals that Intervest has leased. We're not dealing with any individuals where somebody's not signed the lease.
They just haven't signed this lease specific for generating carbon credit.
That is correct.
Correct.
Not sure what direction to take. This is fairly new with us.
Correct.
The carbon credit.
Looks to me like the royalty owner ought to pay the royalties, period. Now, how you handle it, I don't know.
Is there some industry standard for this type of arrangement? I mean, or is this something that you all have done before, or that, I mean,
Now, this is totally new.
I don't believe we have done this before. I've been a part of a lot of our leases, and most of them are with the mineral owner, but we also have overriding leases to like the mine operator as part of being a part of their mine. To my knowledge, we don't have a lessor who's getting a second royalty stream on the sale of their coal bed methane gas, whereas we're leasing the entity. We have situations where in Illinois that we have specifically and only leased the CMM from a seam, and that royalty owner also has conventional gas leased. So there's a division there. This one is unique to me.
Yeah, I think the other issue is that this board has already once approved a methodology for payment under a similar type of well with Pocahontas Gas, and we're getting ready to approve a new type of payment here. Are we fine with that as a board? Having multiple ways people are being paid?
Pocahontas Gas owned all of it. It wasn't a division.
I believe they had some unleased and unknowns in their unit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but they were presenting themselves as the royalty owner. And on the credits.
I'm not sure what your point is, Mr. Prather.
Well, the point is, why we got two royalty owners? I mean, I can understand it if, you bought it from them or something like that. But basically what you're doing, you're using his lease for your credits. And you want to be able to pay your.
No, I think they're in front of us today, Mr. Prather, for the board to approve. We're going to deem these people leased today under an order, and that's how they're going to get paid. They're not going to get paid under the terms of any lease pre-existing with Intervest. They're asking us to do something different.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yes.
That's the reason I'm asking all these questions.
Yeah, Mr. President, I think.
We've never done this before.
Yeah, Mr. Ratliff, was that you wanting to chime in?
Yes. Is Mr. Skarupa there?
No.
No.
I would ask staff, I know that the gas companies have to report monthly, but does the statute say they have to pay royalties monthly?
No, this is the last one before me, so I'm thinking I might be done in a half hour. But if you guys want to go somewhere, you can. Okay.
Okay, my follow-up is, if I heard you correctly, you said that everyone was notified by certified mail or publication. Do you have unknown, unlocatable people in this unit?
No,
We do not have any unknowns, Mr. Ratliff. There were several that did not pick up their certified mailings. I have not through representation of Key Rock, but through other duties that I have as Commissioner of Accounts for Dickinson County, I've actually dealt with 2 of the people. I know they get mail at that address because they got my mail whenever that was going on. But they didn't see fit to pick it up.
Okay.
It looks to me like this is something that the Attorney General or somebody in the legal end ought to make a decision and say how we want to handle it.
Mr. Chair, I can look into this question and get back with you as soon as I can. I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to answer it today.
Yeah, we probably need to do some, this type of arrangement being new to the board, that's the part of the issue, I think. And I'm not sure what best to suggest here.
We want to have a procedure established by the board that the board's comfortable with, because like I said, we've already applied for the easy ones. With the Key Rock wells, the rest of them are in the same situation that this is. So we want to be sure to do whatever makes the board comfortable.
Well, let me try to make a motion. Let's make a motion that the board would seek some advice from our Attorney General's office on determining, I'm going to read this directly from the statute here under 45.2-1620, pooling of interest in drilling units, Part E. Some clarification: under any person who does not make an election under the pooling order shall be deemed to have leased his gas and oil interest to the gas or oil well operator as the pooling order provides. So that's very gray and very broad about what our order is going to say at the end of this. So I think we need some direction to how that order needs to read to determine how these people were going to deem leased. And we would certainly solicit any input from the Key Rock personnel on how they would have that order written to do that.
See, these people got their original lease from the original royalty or the original lessor. That's where they're getting their interest. It's just that they don't want to make the payments through the primary lessor.
that's correct.
I think that's accurate. We would gladly pay Intervest.
Can the board order Intervest?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we could, without their representative being here, I'm not sure we can do that.
I
So,
suspect they would have a thing or two to say about it.
yeah, I'd say so. I suspect we probably ought to, is table this issue. Is that the best language to use in this case, number 5? Until the, board actually can, and the division of gas and oil, can seek some interpretation of this that would apply. And Mr. Lansing, is that appropriate? Do you think that we just wait, not wait, but just not approve this item at the moment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think it's appropriate to table the matter for further advisement.
Okay. Can we say 30 days, 60 days?
I know that my client's going to tell me the sooner the better. So
I'm sure of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem is I'm not even sure who we approach. I guess we'll have to get our collective heads together to.
Yeah, I would suggest that the operator maybe make a suggestion to the Attorney General office and seek some kind of guidance from them. and from the staff itself.
We can submit a proposed order, and put, the provisions that, Mr. Pate has, testified to. And it's always easier to nitpick what somebody sends and.
Well, at least we have something in front of us so can you do that sometime? There's no guarantee. Are we meeting next month? Okay, we will have a meeting next month. I don't know if we can do this in 30 days.
We'll have something submitted, well within that time period. I assume to submit it to Ms. Gilmer and she'll pass it on to the appropriate parties.
Yes. Is that acceptable to everyone that we, usually when we postpone an item, usually we give, go ahead.
I'm not looking at a calendar, but the 30 days may hit before or after the next meeting. I think it'd be worded better if we put it on next month's docket.
Okay. That's a good suggestion that we put it on next month's docket, and then if you will submit to the board, actually, Ms. Gilmer, your proposal, and then we'll have something to look at and review prior to the meeting.
And Mr. Jansen, just so that I'm clear, what you in particular are looking for is laying down exactly what Mr. Pate testified to as far as how royalty would be paid.
Yeah, I think that's the question. I think, just to, I just want the board to be aware that we've approved one of these already, and we may be doing something different now. So we just need to make sure we're all on the same page.
Is it possible for that? I'm not familiar with that. Is it possible for us to have a copy of that so that we can see how they did it, to see if it's something that might be?
Posted,
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Talk with staff, and then after they can direct you to that particular order.
Okay.
In fact, we'll probably need to review that also, since it was different. So we will postpone that item until our next meeting.
And Mr. Chair, I would also ask that you postpone petition 4255, which is in connection with this petition.
Yeah, the one he's referring to is petition from Key Rock Energy LLC. It was for a well location exception for unit Key Rock number 1, this one that we're just describing. That docket number is VGOB 22-1220-4255. That will also be postponed, I guess it's the appropriate language, until our next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for attending, and again, if you'll get with staff, they can get you the information that you need.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think you need a motion, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion,
I
okay?
think you need a motion to defer this to next month's docket.
Okay, I'll accept that if, so now who, is that Donald? Is that Donnie?
Yes.
Cliff, okay, yeah, we can barely hear you, so we'll entertain that motion since that makes it official. We have a motion that we postpone these two docket items, number 5 and 6. We already read numbers. If I need to do that again, VGOB 22-1220-4254 and VGOB 22-1220-455. I'm sorry, 4255, that we postpone those till our next meeting. So is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it was seconded by Gus Jansen. Let's poll the board, if you would, Ms. Gill.
Rita Surratt,
Yes.
Bill Harris,
Yes.
Gus,
Yes.
Millie Cochran,
Yes.
Barry Quillen,
Yes.
Bruce Prather,
Yes.
and Donnie Ratland.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passed. And thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you all next meeting, actually. Okay, I understand that items 7 and 8 have been withdrawn. Is that correct? Oh, staff, or the 7 and 8 have been,
They have to.
postponed.
Okay.
Could the staff elaborate on if the resolve the conflict between prior order that was and a second order that was approved by the order that created this conflict? Has the conflict been resolved?
I'll ask Mr. Schwartz to speak to the conflict. I haven't received any information on that kind of thing. All I received was notification that the 2 petitions have been withdrawn.
Okay, my understanding, this is Mark Schwartz. My understanding is that because we had filed petitions and to vacate, that we couldn't just unilaterally withdraw them. What has happened is the problem that we had, or a problem that we had with the orders, was that there were going to be joint operators with AEI. As I understand it, 60-day notices have gone out from Coronado to AEI to plug the AEI wells. And when we learned that this issue was going to be resolved in 60 days as a matter of course, we thought it was more efficient to just withdraw our motion to vacate the 2 orders. Both of those orders provide that as soon as the AEI wells are plugged, which we anticipate is going to be in 60 days, Pocahontas would become the sole operator. So it solves our problem. So that's why we moved to vacate. We were told by Sarah, and it makes sense to me, that we couldn't just unilaterally withdraw the petitions. We needed the board's permission to do that. And we're asking you to let us withdraw the motions to vacate because for the reasons I've just stated.
Okay, then, so the board will entertain a motion to withdraw those items for the reason stated by Mr. Schwartz. Do we have that motion?
So moved.
Okay, it's been, actually, Ms. Ratt made the motion before you did, Ms. Quillen. Would you consider seconding that motion?
Second.
Second, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further questions? Okay, would you poll the board, please? Thank you.
Ms. Surratt,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Jansen,
Yes.
Mr. Cochran,
Yes.
Mrs. Quillen,
Yes.
Mr. Prater,
Yes.
and Mr. Ratliff. Mr. Ratliff,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Do we need to move on, or are we done? Okay, I guess we're done.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, with Mr. Schwartz. Okay. Okay, good seeing you again. Okay.
Thank you all.
Board, yeah, thank you. Let's see, the board will receive an update on board and division activities from the staff.
there's just a couple of things I was gonna mention to everybody. As you know, everybody voted for the First Bank and Trust contract to be renewed, but has been renewed for 1 year. The only other item I was gonna mention, I know Jody's already gone over all the escrow numbers. I was just gonna mention that I'll be sending out letters for the achievement list. That'll be eschewed at the end of the year. I'll be sending out letters like I normally do. And last year, you all voted to only send letters out for $50 or more, since that list is lengthy. What, is that what you want to follow that again this year, or do you all want letters sent out to people who receive 1 penny? I mean, I'll do whatever you all want to be done, but last year we talked about it and the board voted $50 or more, we would send letters out, so.
What type of response that we get from that? I mean, in other words, is there any way of knowing?
You don't receive much response, and a lot of the letters are returned.
Yeah.
And
Just never picked up, or just not, or picked up and not responded to?
both, yes.
What kind of cost was associated with sending out all those letters? Was it 1,000 or was it 50 or?
Depends on how many I send, you know, if we
So how
send
big?
them for $50 or more, the cost was not very much. There wasn't as many, it cut way down on the amount of letters. But they will be eschewed, I think in October or November, the money will be by the bank. I just I'm seeking your guidance on what you prefer that we do again.
But then again, it's your time.
With that number, whatever number you all decide, we can stick with that every year and I won't have to ask you again, or we can address it every year. I'm just, checking with you before I send the letters out.
Well, I guess I asked about what kind of response we got. Of course, it's your time. I mean, it's company time, but it's still your time and postage. And, I guess it's probably not a good question asked about whether or not it's worthwhile, but, if I don't know how to answer that.
Mr. Chairman, you ready to entertain a motion?
I will.
I make a motion that we send out letters for those that have $50 or more.
Okay.
Notify them that their money's going to be exceeded.
Okay.
Do you want to make that a standing motion going forward so we don't have to do it every year?
I will accept that amendment.
Yes. Okay. So Mr. Ratliff had made that motion that we send letters to people who have more than $50 in their accounts, indicating that money will be escheated to the state. And that motion is also, will be done annually. In other words, instead of coming before the board each time, we would allow you to just go ahead and do that. So is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, so Ms. Quillen, thank you. Any further discussion? Would you poll the board, Ms. Gilman?
Rita Surratt,
Yes.
Bill Harris,
Yes.
Gus Jansen,
Yes.
Willie Cochran,
Yes.
Mary Quillen,
Yes.
Bruce Prather,
Yes.
and Donnie Ratliff.
Yes.
Okay, fine. The motion is approved. Any other announcements? I understand we do have a meeting for next month. We do have enough items that will. And so then the board will review the October 2022 minutes for approval. That's been a while. Any discussion of the minutes, or do I hear a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? Okay, thank you, Mr. Ratt. Okay, Mr. Ratt did, but yes, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the October 2022 board meeting. And again, we'll take a vote if Ms. Gilmer would poll the board.
Rita Surratt,
Yes.
Bill Harris.
Yes.
Gus Jansen,
Yes.
Billy Cochran,
Yes.
Mary Quillen,
Yes.
Bruce Prather,
Yes.
and Donnie Ratliff.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion passed. Mr. Lansing, you were on our agenda at the end of the agenda, but I know we moved forward and moved some of your presentation to the beginning. Is there something else that you need? I know there are a couple of things. I think one was on FOIA. Well, that may have been conflict of interest. But the other was the electronic meetings policy. We
That's
did
right.
move first.
Mr. Chair, everything that I was going to discuss at the end of the meeting, we moved to the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
Sarah and I had discussed the possibility of me potentially giving a full overview of the Freedom of Information Act and the Conflict of Interest Act. But with the General Assembly session still going on, I'm afraid I'm not going to have time to cover that.
Yes.
So my recommendation would be if you need FOIA and COIA training, you can do that online through the FOIA Council and or the COIA Council.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much then.
Yes,
I
sir.
believe our staff in the Richmond office was going to send you all an email with the links for those two trainings so that you would be able to do those online.
Okay.
You have in the past, I think. So I think y'all are familiar with.
Yes. Logging in and
Right,
adding
yeah,
electronic.
done.
Yes.
Yeah, so if everybody would mind to do that training, and then we'll get everybody accounted for with that, and we'll be good till next year.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much. Is there anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
one more item, please.
Yes,
I would ask our attorney in the AG's office, there is a bill that Senator Ackworth and Delegate Kilgore put in on these tax credits on bleeding off VBH holes, not production wells, but VBH holes, and how they're going to handle that royalty-wise. You might want to talk to Mike Skipington or Will Payne, and because they've been at every hearing when these bills are come up and they understand them fully. So that might be some guidance there to, since there is a bill that's being considered right now.
This is Mr. Hackworth's bill on the credits.
On methane, yes, on methane credits and methane.
Oh, okay, yes.
Renewable.
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah, I've taken a look at each of them.
Those deal with VBH holes, not production wells, but there may be some similarities there to look at.
Okay.
All right.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Ratliff. Anything else? Hearing nothing else, I guess we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You did a wonderful job.
Well, I'm not sure, but thank you, Connie.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Yeah.